Hi guys. Today we're moving on to section 11-2. Today specifically we're going to focus on multiplying monomial expressions. So we're going to be multiplying two fractions together, but within each fraction there's only going to be monomials. That means no factoring today because there's not going to be any adding or subtracting. I'm going to show you one example today, and I'm going to show you two different methods on how you can approach the example. You can choose which method makes the most sense to you and which one you would like to do for your homework. Remember, as always, I should be able to tell by looking at the work on your homework which method you chose to use. So here's our problem. We are multiplying together two fractions. And again, it's monomials today. That means no adding and subtracting. That means today you don't have to worry about factoring. For our first method today, we will be multiplying straight across, creating a single fraction. And then after we create our single fraction, then we can simplify it like we did earlier this week. When you're multiplying two fractions together, you do multiply straight across. Top numbers get multiplied together and bottom numbers get multiplied together. If you have more than one of the same variable on the top or on the bottom, you would add the exponents together. And if you have more than one coefficient, you actually multiply those together. Now, on the top of this fraction, I have a 3c to the fourth, d to the fifth. Those have nothing in common, so I'm just going to squish them together and write them on the top of one fraction. For the bottom, though, I do have two coefficients. I have a 2 and a 6. Those are going to multiply together, and they're both going to go to the front of the problem. And so at the front of the problem, I will be writing a 12. I'm also going to switch the order of the letters because I like it when they're in alphabetical order. I also like it when they stay consistent. So on the top, I had a C and then a D. So I kind of want to write that on the bottom as well. C followed by D. Now that we have a single fraction, we can do what we learned earlier this week. This is from Monday's video. So on Monday's video, we reviewed from chapter 7 that your coefficients, the 3 and the 12, you do want to actually simplify those. So 3 and 12 can both be divided by 3. And on top of the 3 is just going to completely disappear. And then on the bottom, the 12 turns into a 4. For my variables, you can use the visual method, which was writing them all out and then canceling one for one, top and bottom. Or you can use our chapter 7 concept, which is subtracting. If I'm going to do subtracting for my C's, I'm going to do 4 minus 2, which is 2. And then for my D's, I'll do 5 minus 2, which is D to the third. The C and the D will both stay on top of the fraction since that's where the larger exponent was. My final answer for this problem is c squared d to the third over 4. This is one way you can do this problem. So if you choose this method on your homework, I should see the original question, and then it should have the single fraction, and then it should have a final answer, okay? So that's how you can show work if you're going to use this method. Now, there is another way to do these problems, and maybe you remember this from a previous class. So method number 2 that you can choose is cross-canceling. Cross-canceling is when you see something on the top of a fraction and on the bottom of a fraction that can be simplified. Cross-canceling is technically a division problem, dividing. For instance, I have a 3 on the top of my first fraction and a 6 on the bottom of my second fraction, and I know that those are both divisible by 3. So I could divide those both by 3, and then 6 divided by 3 is 2. Notice that I put the 2 down here right next to the 6. 3 divided by 3 is 1. I don't need to write down a 1. Ones can be invisible. Now you can also cross-cancel with your variables. It does have to be one on the top and one on the bottom. They don't have to be on different fractions. They could be on the same fraction or different fractions, as long as it's the same letter. And again, there's one on the top and one on the bottom. If they're both on the bottom, you can't cancel them. Then you have to actually multiply them. And same if they're both on the top. Then you would have to actually multiply them together. But in this problem, I do have some letters on the top and on the bottom, so I will be cross-canceling those. When you're cross canceling, again, you're doing subtracting, and you can do the bigger number minus the smaller number. So just like, I mean, this is the same problem as the previous example. So for my C's, I'm going to do 4 minus 2, which is 2. And the 2 ends up on top because that's where the 4 was. And then for the D's, I'll do 5 minus 2, which is 3. And that ends up on the top because that's where the larger exponent was. Once you're all done, you're going to take whatever is left over, whatever was not crossed off, and you're going to write it together as a single fraction. So the important thing about these multiplying problems is that when you're done, everything goes together as one fraction. And so you need to identify everything that's left over on the top, anything that did not get canceled out, and then anything that did not get canceled out on the bottom. So on the top, I have a C to the second now and a D to the third. And then on the bottom, I have two number twos. Now, since this is multiplying, I am going to multiply the two number twos together, and that will become a number 4. Now, the one drawback to cross canceling is it can get a little bit messy, and sometimes we will lose things as we're writing them down, or when we're going to combine everything into that single fraction at the end, we might forget something or accidentally skip over something, and then we'll be missing that part of our answer. So that's the one drawback to cross canceling, is that if it's a really big problem, sometimes it can get a little bit messy. So it might be easier to do that by smushing it into a single fraction first and then simplifying. But again, personal choice. If you do choose to do cross canceling, I should see on your homework a lot of slashes, right? I should see canceling. I should see extra numbers written down that are like the leftovers from after you're done canceling. So I should see some sort of work on your homework. And again, I don't care which method you use. I want you to pick the method that you're most comfortable with and use that method on tonight's homework. And guys, that's it. One video today and we are all done. I'll see you guys tomorrow.